You. What is your name? After noticing that Xiao Qingrong was dressed in school clothes, Tian Mingwei, an instructor, had already picked up the electric stun on the table. I had no idea what I was getting myself into with this kid. Lin Wen, the female instructor, rose from behind Tian Mingwei and carefully studied Xiao Qingrong, who stood at the entrance. She remembered that the boy had been delivered here 7 days earlier and that Mr. Tang was supposed to bring him out of the confinement chamber today. When the students who were sitting peacefully observed Xiao Qingrong, a weird light shone in their eyes, and they realized that Xiao Qingrong might be a student. They didn't care about the blood on his face. The only thing that mattered right now was how this student got into this room by himself. Xiao Qingrong was pleased by the expressions of these people. His left hand was slowly raised, and the scalpel in his hand was rapidly spun, dazzling the audience. His nimble fingers piqued the kids' interest even more. I declare that the Mengyu school is mine. Understand that you will all listen to me in the future? His understatement left the pupils speechless, but Tian Mingwei grew enraged, grabbed the electric baton, and charged towards Xiao Qingrong. Tian Mingwei repeatedly did this to rebellious pupils. He has set the electric baton to its maximum setting this time, intending to electrocute this insolent brat. Tian Mingwei suffered from insanity, so his mental state was odd. He never thought it was immoral to beat a child. After all, children are a mark of weakness in his eyes. Tian Mingwei hurried to Qingrong with this thought in mind, not knowing what type of monster he would meet. Xiao Qingrong disliked these types of dumb individuals. Such folks would not pass judgment on the circumstances. When Xiao Qingrong saw this man, who felt he was powerful and armed, run at him, he slammed the scalpel into Mingwei's neck. When this happened, Tian Mingwei was still 2 meters away. He swiftly dropped the electric baton and wrapped his hands around his neck. The blood in Tian Mingwei's neck continued to flow. This time, Xiao Qingrong evaded a fatal blow, so even though the scalpel was pushed into the person's neck, his life was not in danger, but he couldn't talk. In any event, if it is not treated within half an hour, you will die. Mingwei's female instructor was so terrified that she couldn't even yell. The students witnessed their teacher being attacked with a scalpel. They were all expressionless. Even in the eyes of youngsters, you could see the anger that exploded in an instant, making Xiao Qingrong believe that people who had been oppressed for so long had essentially become beasts. Mengyu school oppresses these kids through corporal punishment or severe punishment. It is analogous to domesticating animals. If you performed well, you would be fed. If you did not, you would be beaten. Humans originally utilized this strategy to teach domestic animals, but it is now being applied to these youngsters. The mood in the craft area was oppressive. Nobody said anything. Only Tian Mingwei's shrill voice remained. He shook and reached for his phone in his pocket to call for help, but just as he did, Xiao Qingrong appeared in front of him. He knelt and took up the electrified baton. He then struck Tian Mingwei after readjusting the level. A loud noise could be heard, and Tian Mingwei's body trembled continually as the mobile phone fell to the ground. All of the pupils rose, but no one moved. They just stared at the instructor, who was repeatedly punishing them by getting slapped by this strange youngster. Lin Wen, the other instructor, discreetly pulled out her phone and attempted to dial 911. But she was noticed on the side by a male student, who came toward her and seized the phone, which he violently hurled to the floor. Snap! Everyone was taken aback by the noise. The female instructor knelt on the ground, shaking, gazing at her smashed phone, and holding her head. She didn't know why she was sobbing. Please don't murder me. Please do not murder me. While Xiao Qingrong adored the instructor who was being electrocuted. He had previously double-checked his data. The instructor's favorite pastime was beating kids with his electric baton. He also enjoyed hearing other people's screams while he was torturing them. So I'll let him experience it and feel the energy. Tian Mingwei never anticipated being treated this way one day. He couldn't talk because a knife was jammed into his throat. The anguish made him shake, and tears of blood began to flow from his eyes. He was scared of life and death. Xiao Qingrong concentrated on the students while holding the electric baton. They were well-behaved tiny rabbits, but these little bunnies were presently red-eyed and full of fury. Even as they stared at the blood gushing from Tian Mingwei's neck, they showed no fear. It was typical to see blood at Mengyu School. Which of these kids had not yet been trained by an instructor? Which of them had not witnessed another youngster being abused? Every day, everyone was thrashed and reprimanded. Those who disobey will be beaten. They would be thrashed if they did anything wrong. They would be thrashed if they were late for supper. They would be beaten even if there was no justification. Being handled aggressively was the norm at this institution, so most of the pupils were used to it. People here were already driving these kids insane by treating them like beasts. But have they thought about how these encircled creatures may attack them in the future? 618 was in charge of everything that transpired. It wanted to tell the host not to kill, but it understood what the host was doing was correct. When the law was unable to punish evil, violence became necessary. These kids looked like withered roses. Their eyes were lifeless, typically looking blankly, but they were displaying their terrified rage just now. This brought back memories of the information they had consulted. Those who felt comfortable sending their children here, is it feasible to have an obedient child? The data demonstrate an inverse relationship. Children who have left one of these schools will not talk about it for a long time, but the majority of them will have some type of mental disorder and will be unable to communicate properly. They will also have a slew of phobias as a result of their outing. All of these mental diseases are the result of parents attempting to assist their children. However, there were worse situations. According to network statistics, hundreds of families have been murdered after their children came home. The youngsters were driven insane in this type of environment, unable to leave school and expecting their parents to save them from the start, and subsequently, hatred led to such a disaster. These so-called instructors were the cause of all of this. Their torture and punishment transformed these youngsters into creatures. Xiao Qingrong approached the student next to him with caution, keeping an eye on the other party, who was clearly terrified of him but remained standing there, firmly biting his lip. Qingrong chuckled and handed the child the electric baton. Don't you desire vengeance? He can't move now, so you may do whatever you want to him, just as he did to you. Yang Fan was the boy's name, and he had been a student at Mengyu School for 3 years. He wanted to leave from the start and pleaded with his parents to help him, but he was stuck here learning how to be a good student. He'd been beaten and electrocuted. Incarceration and physical punishment were regular side dishes. Yang Fan grew submissive and meek as a result of these punishments. On occasion, he even considered suicide. When Tiang Fan saw Qingrong with blood on his face, he had no idea why he felt such overwhelming bravery today. He stretched out and seized Qingrong's electric baton, then headed towards Tian Mingwei without saying anything. Yang Fan's quivering hand held the electric baton in front of all the students' gaze, and he was eventually charged onto Tian Mingwei's body. Yang Fan burst out laughing as he saw Tian Mingwei getting injured by the lightning and the blood from his neck running like crazy. He smiled happily, and his hands stopped shaking. He began striking Tian Mingwei's body with the electric baton after a brief respite. The kids around them discreetly gathered. Everyone's face was filled with excitement and fury, and there was a mixed sense of vengeance. For a long period, the teachers at Mengyu School trained these kids to be obedient. However, if they were allowed to escape their prison, they would transform into true creatures. Tian Mingwei was finally on the ground after being electrocuted several times, surrounded by his classmates. They weren't sure who began it, but someone kicked him hard, and everyone else followed. Nobody paused. Instead, they clenched their teeth and rewarded the teacher for what they had gone through. Xiao Qingrong took a step back and locked the door before gently approaching the female teacher. She crouched down and glanced at the female teacher, who was crying and grasping her head. Why are you afraid, you? Didn't you treat them like that?